really solid engineers get on the bus and to rise up through the ranks from first line to second line to project engineer. The whole organisation kind of participated and bought into the workshops because cultures, I believe that you either do it deliberately or it will form itself. And if it forms itself, some of the big mistakes we have made is not always bringing focus back to the culture, to the values. I think you also start to take it for granted. It's just going to carry on ticking along now, but you've got to treat it like a car. Do your service checks on it, because if you don't do that, then everything used to be an IT issue. It used to be cybersecurity was an IT issue. It was IT's job to keep an organisation safe. That's not the case anymore. Cybersecurity is where we look for people that are going to be a good fit for the team first, and then have strong technical skills second.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to It's Always the Human. Now this, as you may have gathered if you watched the previous episode with James Davis, is all about taking a little detour away from the tech for a while and talking purely about the human aspects of what affects us in this beautiful channel ecosystem that we have. Today we're talking about culture. So as you know, a lot of MSP owners have sort of fallen into leadership roles, come from tech backgrounds, that kind of thing. Often it affects sales and marketing and all sorts of other topics. But one of the things it affects is the culture side of things as well. So leading a team, that kind of stuff. So I've got some brilliant guests with me today. I've got a co-host who I'll introduce in just a second, and I've got the wonderful Damien Harrison from Bondgate IT, who's the operations and marketing director there. He's got plenty of experience and can give us the sort of the warts and all version of what it's like to build culture, going from a small MSP to a slightly larger one. So first of all, just introduce you, Damien. How are you doing? Welcome to It's Always the Human.
Thank you very much. I'm doing all right. It's a very, very busy time, very, very challenging at the moment, but all's good. It's good to chat with you.
You've got lots on, haven't you, at the moment? We'll touch on that a bit later on. There's a lots, not just work, but personal as well. Lorna, I've got to bring you in. Lorna, I'm just gonna call you the channel face of everywhere but the US, because your job title's a little bit long, but you're part of the usecure team. Do you want to say hello?
Hi, James. Yeah, I look after the partners for usecure everywhere apart from North America and Canada. Thanks, James.
Yeah, hopefully, if you've ever been to an IT event anyway, you'll have seen Lorna. She's pretty much got the bases covered there, I think. Damien, do you want to give us a bit of an overview before we dive in then? Just a little bit about Bondgate, if you don't mind. So just kind of roughly, where you're located, roughly sort of size and that kind of stuff, just some basics.
Yeah, so we were set up in 1998 as a typical computer shop, business to consumer. People come in, buy computers. Quickly, the MD at the time realised that it was a bit of a challenging market, and they transitioned across to business. And in the 27 years over the time, it's gone from 2 or 3 people. We're now 22 people based in Darlington in the northeast.
That's quite a transformation then, isn't it? It doesn't look the same these days.
Yeah, it's a complete transformation. I've been here 7 years. I started out originally with a client, and I liked the vibe of the place and thought, that looks quite interesting to get into.
Yeah, nice. So you like the vibe of the place. That's obviously, that ties in then to what we're talking about. So tell me, did you have a sort of specific thing you were looking for a sort of, in terms of the company you wanted to work with? Like, what was it stood out in terms of the vibe?
I'd worked a charity for several years, and I liked the human nature of things, how it wasn't overly corporate. It was people were allowed to be people. And over that time, I'd built a really good relationship with Gary and the team at Bondgate. And as it happens, you reach where you think your destination is at an organisation. I was driving into work one day and I passed Gary's car and I thought, I'm going to give him a call. Do you know anyone who's got any jobs going? And he's like, not at the moment, but if I do, I'll give you a call. A week later, he phoned me and went, my operations manager's quit.
What do you know about ops?
What do you know about ops?
You'll pick it up, it'll be fine.
Exactly. The first thing he did was send something across called the Harrison assessment, and it was a personality test, kind of, and what it gives you is a paradox of these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses, but these are where we expect people to fit in within the team, so what the values are of the organisation. I scored really highly on empathy, but quite low on abruptness. Other people in the organisation are kind of the yin and yang of that, so it tends to work really, really well.
And so, in terms of what you've seen in the business, then can you see? I mean, what I don't want to paint a picture that it's all been rosy from the very beginning. So let's get into some of the details then. So, in terms of sort of how it's looked, have you had any times within the company, in your experience, where perhaps it's not worked out? You think maybe there hasn't been a cultural fit? Like, let's look at that a little bit.
There is. It's the way I kind of describe it is businesses and people and relationships. Everyone grows at a different pace. Everyone has kind of a different lifespan, and where an individual is now might not match where the business is. So a friend of mine describes it as being on a bus journey, and whoever gets on the bus at the start, they might get off at the bus on different times, or they might stay in the bus forever, who knows. We've had issues where really, really solid engineers get on the bus and to rise up through the ranks from first line to second line to project engineer. And then they can't go any further. And it's like, oh, they're the best engineer we've got. Let's make them a manager. And they're a really good engineer, but they're not a good manager. And part of that is that they don't enjoy it.
Yeah. And I've had personal relationships with this, whereas people can move into higher positions and they suddenly go, oh, actually, this isn't my forte. And everybody's different. I had a similar thing with usecure. I didn't have a great time at my previous business, but when I got interviewed by usecure, I was quite concerned because obviously the hair, let's face it, it's blue.
That's become your trademark, hasn't it? How you lent into that? I mean, that's something that's
just bizarre. But I'd actually been dismissed in interviews by some companies because they were like, "What's with the hair?" And I'm like, "Well, who are you going to remember? Are you going to remember a suit, or are you going to remember somebody with a bit of personality?" But when I was interviewed at usecure, it was a blind interview, so they didn't even see me for the first two, which I thought was absolutely awesome because they're not judging me on how I look, how old I look, whether I've got tattoos or, and I just really like that, and it put me at ease. And the culture within our business is very much the same. We've got lots of people who look and are from different parts of the world, but we all have that common objective that we want to achieve. So I guess it's similar for you, Damien, with your workforce. That sounds like the same sort of thing.
It is. So we adopt what I called the Harrison assessment, working with a third party. They came in, delivered workshops, helped us discover kind of our organisational culture, our mission, our vision, our values. And so they did that slightly before I started. But that was where we see kind of like the transformation of the organisation occur. And part of it was to embrace disruption and to challenge thinking. So straight away people started saying, why are we using this? Why are we doing stuff this way? That's causing so much headache and slowing us down. Why don't we look at different PSAs like ConnectWise or Halo? Why don't we move away from using tools that have done us well for 20 odd years
Did you embody that
maybe
across the team then? Is that something you managed to get? Is that something that is just like one or two, or like? 'Cause I mean,
the whole
yeah.
organisation kind of participated and bought into the workshops, because culture is one of those things, and I believe that it's, you either do it deliberately or it'll form itself. And if it forms itself, it could be good, but it also could be bad, in the fact that you suddenly got people with the strongest voices having
Yes.
the biggest say about what the culture is in an organisation.
What was it at
So,
Bondgate,
yeah.
do you think? Was that like, do you think it was more of a deliberate thing from the outset, or was there a point where it was like, okay, maybe this isn't going in the route that we wanted it? Obviously, this would have been maybe prior to your time, I don't know.
It was prior to my time, but I spoke about it quite a lot with Gary, the MD. And prior to that, it was very indeliberate. It was very individual-based kind of culture and values. So a lot of the people that were around then aren't around now. And part of that is the bus was going at a different speed to a different destination than they were going. And part of it is they were going at a different speed to Bondgate. It's people grow and mature at different stages, and it's not a bad thing. Sometimes people want a lot more than what we can offer at that time.
Are there any mistakes you think you've made along the way? Anything that you think, okay, well, in terms of the sort of things we could have done differently to improve the culture, is there anything there that you think, okay, actually, yeah, maybe we weren't going down the right path with what we were looking for, or we managed to get some people on that weren't the right fit in succession, or something along those lines?
Some of the big mistakes we have made is not always bringing focus back to the culture, to the values. We've sometimes allowed them to drift to the side, which is really bizarre, because why do that when it's made us successful?
Yeah, why would that happen? Why would that be the case? Just so busy with the day-to-day that you lose sight of it, or?
I think you lose sight, but I think you also start to take it for granted. You start to take, well, it's just going to carry on ticking along now. But you've got to treat it like a car, haven't you, like a vehicle. You've got to do your service checks on it. You've got to do your MOT. You've got to sometimes get out and give all the tyres a kick and see if it's actually still moving forward. Because if you don't do that, then you'll get hit with surprises where, again, people's values change, and sometimes where they were at the start is not where they are currently.
What are the service checks look like? What's that about then? Would you say, what are the things to look for? Because that's quite a tricky thing to keep an eye on, isn't it?
It is. So we have an annual meeting where we all get together, and it involves going out and doing something like go-karting, but it also involves awards, and one of the awards is voted for by the team. And everyone in the office has 3 votes, and they choose who they think is the player's player of the year, kind of thing. And they also say why that individual deserves that nomination. And we use them awards to kind of just put that highlight back on. These are the people that are living our values, and this is how they're living their values. Another thing that we've done quite often is Spotify came up with kind of like a team health check as part of their huge growth that they went through. The way to do it is they give you a set of questions, and everyone gets a red, an amber, or a green card. And it's questions such as, are we proud in what we're delivering? And people hold up the cards. And it's not about challenging people saying, why do you think it's red? It's that individual's perception is that they're not proud of what we're delivering.
Is this just you sat in a room doing this? Is it just something you do periodically?
It's something we do periodically with the team, and we try to get their whole mindset about what they think is working, what they think's not working, what they think's missing, and what they think's confused. Because I could be sat in my operations seat looking down thinking, well, it all looks great down there. But until you get to the place where the work occurs, so the Japanese call it the gemba, until you get to the gemba and actually stop and watch the work, you can't really make that assumption that stuff is working.
That's really clever. And what happens if somebody puts up a red card? Do you just openly say, why, why would you score it that way? Because I think a lot of people would be terrified to do that because they'd think if I say something detrimental or, you know, slightly controversial, they could be they could be out on their ear.
Yeah.
So
So we kind of
what
promote
happens?
that. We kind of promote that challenge. So there's a book called Radical Candor, and the NHS tried implementing it several years ago, where people have that psychological safety to say, this is rubbish. This isn't what we should be doing. But
They might be looking to reverse that a bit now, maybe, the NHS. I don't know. There's only so much radical candor you can take.
There is, but for me, as a concept, it's perfect in the fact that you distill that psychological safety on people to say, if something's wrong, so my favourite, I love analogies and I love reading. So in the Toyota factory, around the entire Toyota factory is a red cable called the Andon cable. And everyone in the factory, if they spot something that's a defect or something that's wrong, they have the ability to pull this cable and stop the line. And you'd think, well, that can't happen too often because it'd be really expensive, it would be really disruptive. It happens thousands of times a day where they stop the line. And it's to spot little defects such as a screw not being tightened enough, piece of paint not looking how it should do. And everyone's got that ability, but also that expectation that if they see something that does not meet customer needs or puts people's safety at risk, to pull that cable, and they won't be challenged about why they've pulled the cable. They won't be tossed out on their ear for pulling the cable. They'll be celebrated for stopping that defect leaving the Toyota factory. And that's what we're trying to build here is, if you spot something that's wrong, pull that Andon cable, stop the line, and let's fix it before it becomes a cybersecurity issue, before it becomes a data loss issue, before it really starts to impact the customer.
Do you pass that kind of? Do you pass that on to your clients? So when you are talking to your clients about the cybersecurity stuff, to say, this is how we work. It works really well. Encourage your workforce to operate in the same way. And have you ever had pushback on that sort of mentality?
We do. So again, we tell our clients, if something doesn't look right, don't assume it's right, don't believe it's right, and check everything. Because ultimately, if you stop checking and you start believing and you start assuming, that's where things tend to bite you in the butt. And clients are really embracing of that, because it's that whole, oh, you're not just telling us we're going to be safe. You're saying, we think you're safe, but we know that the bad guys, the Cybertos of the world, will sneak in through the back door and they'll try any which way they can to get into your business.
Right. Yeah. So it's that shared responsibility, isn't it? Which I think for companies like yours, I used to be a reseller, and quite often, I mean, I'm going back years, but people would just assume they could pass the whole responsibility chunk of security over to me, and it was just up to me. And then if something went wrong, they'd be like, well, you've given me this, but it hasn't worked. And it's like, well, actually, it has worked, but if you'd have done X, Y, Z, like I said, it would have worked better. Do you feel the same sort of processes with some of your clients?
So what we talk about with our clients is, everything used to be an IT issue. It used to be cybersecurity was an IT issue. It was IT's job to keep an organisation safe. That's not the case anymore. Cybersecurity is a board level issue. It's about the board taking that accountability and giving the IT department and its partners the responsibility and the budget in order to enact and make sure the business stays safe. And part of that swings back around again to the MSPs about not just being product resellers. It's about being a partner. It's about taking them on that journey. It's about working with them to identify what risks are in their business, about these are what's going to make you pull that cord. These are what we think you need to probably address first. They're not going to benefit us as an organisation in our income stream, as well as some of the other things that we could offer you. But in order to keep yourself safe, this is what we'd recommend.
You've got a real framework emerging there, haven't you? So you've got you've got the Harrison part when you're doing the recruitment, you've got the instilling the sort of the challenge everything, and then you've got the celebrating of that, I suppose, which is it all comes together, doesn't it? What's the word from the team? How have you seen this be received by them? Is it universally great, or are people some people do it, some people don't? What's the real version of how this actually looks on the ground floor?
When people first join us from other organisations, they struggle with that entire concept, in the fact that, so you allow me to speak up and say something's wrong.
Or do you say that and then you don't actually let me, and I shouldn't do, but you're saying you should to feel good about yourself?
Exactly. So it takes a while at times, which is why we do the Harrison assessment as part of that whole recruitment process, where we look for people that are going to be a good fit for the team first, and then have strong technical skills second. It's easier to teach technical skills than it is to teach behavioural abilities, and that's the kind of approach we take. Where we have a lot more success is through our apprenticeship schemes, in the fact that we'll bring people in that haven't had the greatest world of experiences yet, but they're wanting to learn, they're wanting to be mentored and be coached to become a really good IT professional. They seem to embrace it really, really quickly.
Which part?
And they seem to run with it.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Which part of it would you say is the bit that really resonates with them then, do you reckon? Because that's pretty huge, isn't it? If you've got something there that really aids recruitment. Do you think it's the fact that it's just you're open to challenge what we're doing, and that is empowering, and that's empowering enough for someone who's looking at setting out on a career?
I think it's partly that, James. I think a lot of it is youth are open to challenge stuff anyway. They've been brought up with challenging everything and having that ability to say, well, I don't like that. And when you give them that ability in a business to say, why do we do that? And if you can't answer why we do it and why we're doing it, and it's like, okay. So they seem really willing to kind of embrace that whole pull the cord, challenge us. But it's also about having them conversations. It's about being accessible. It's about them seeing people in the office and being able to have a conversation with them. Not, well, I see Damien come in, goes into his office, I don't see him till he leaves at the end of the day. It's having a slice of pizza.
Yeah, it's that approachability, isn't it? Sort of our organisation, I know if I really need to, I can phone the CEO and he'll be like, hey, what's up? And in the same vein, you know, as a company, I've never worked at such an excellent company, because there's a lot of young people, young people compared to me here, but we've all got the same voice, and it's not there's no dictatorship, which I've worked in business historically, where, you know, the MD is the MD and you do what you're told, and, you know, you don't question the decision. But I see such, it was actually quite a shock for me when I started my role, that now it's really refreshing, and it empowers you, and it actually makes you feel confident in the thoughts and the decisions that you might be proposing. Even not all of them will be, taken on board, but it was so nice just being able to throw suggestions out there to senior management and them actually listening and taking it into consideration. And I think that's what makes a company sticky with employees, is
It
that
is.
whole culture.
It gives you that job satisfaction at the end of the day as well, doesn't it? You go home and you're not stressing. You've got that ability just to go, bleh.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's what you need to do. Sometimes you just need to pick up the phone and just give them a spaghetti load of verbiage. You don't want an answer. You don't want a solution. You just want someone who you can just pick up and just go, blah.
Yeah. And there's been instances I've made mistakes, and I've had a awkward conversation, burst into tears, apologised, and but everything's moved on then. It's acknowledged, it's received, it's advised, and it's like, okay, I'm really sorry. And then you move on. And there's so many places where that happens, and people, they don't allow them to move on. And then that baggage just gets heavier and heavier. So yeah, I think you're spot on there. It's having that freedom of opinion and speech is so critical for a successful business.
And would you say one of the challenges there also, though, is that, I mean, I'm with you on the positives there, is one of the challenges that, you're giving people a load of freedom there, really. You're giving them, you value their time, you want to hear from them, you want them to challenge you and so on. What happens when there's someone that maybe isn't a great fit? What do you do to address that? And can you think of an example there, Damien?
Yeah, so it goes back to that challenge everything, doesn't it? And if someone is showing behaviours and values that you think, wow, that's not good, tell them. And because you're building that whole ability where they can challenge you if you're doing something that's not right or doesn't fit, when you then challenge them, you've built up that trust, you've built up that relationship. Where it's gone wrong, I used to say quite a lot of stuff and then hope that people would run with it. So I used to give people, I need a report on X, Y, and Z. And that was pretty much what I gave them. And then a week, 2 weeks came and I'm like, well, where's my report? And they're like, well, you didn't tell me when you wanted it. You just said you needed it. And I'm like, I didn't tell you when I wanted it. No, I just assumed that you just go ahead and do it. But so I've had to do a lot of slowing myself down, thinking about kind of instructions I'm giving people. And it sounds cheesy, doesn't it? Because everyone says, oh, smart objectives and all that. But am I being smart with what I'm asking people? Am I making sure it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic? And am I giving them a deadline to actually achieve it? Am I saying, can I have a report for this client and can I have it by this Friday at about 12 p.m, please? And then if they can't do it, magically they went, you know what, it's going to be a real struggle to do it by then, but I can have it with you by about 5 o'clock on Friday. Is that okay? And it's like, yeah, and at 5 o'clock it magically appears and it's like, oh, wow.
Just like a little bit of extra detail and that's it, yeah, you get your
I was the
outcome.
issue there. Yeah, I was the issue. I was creating the blockage by just not being as specific as probably I need to be, because my assumption was people would just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and I suppose they've got stuff that they've got lined up that they need to do. So without that additional information, they can't prioritise what they need to do first. So it's like they would be doing their priority stuff first and then get to you, whereas it needed to be the other way around.
Yeah, it's totally, It was down to me not saying, this is when I need it. And it happens because everyone gets busy. Everyone just runs at 1,000,000 miles an hour at times. But you slow yourself down, and magically everything else starts to fit in quite nicely.
That's really good. I think you've given us a really nice little framework there of the things that you do, and giving us a bit of an insight into the way you do things differently. It's been really interesting to hear. So we always have on this episode, we always have a segment which is the confession, and that's basically where you basically talk about your biggest leadership mistake, basically that you think's impacted on the team specifically. Are you able to share one of those with us today?
There is, yeah. It's probably one of my biggest ones was them tough conversations where you need to sit down and discuss something with someone. That's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be a nice conversation. And no one looks forward to them. And I don't. So as I said earlier, I score really highly on empathy and quite low on bluntness. And I always think, well, if I have this conversation, it's just going to be really upset. It's just going to be,
What are we talking about here? Is this an underperforming thing and options?
It wasn't even underperforming. It was a member of staff at another place I worked at who personal hygiene wasn't where it needed to be.
That's difficult, isn't it?
And I kept putting it off and kept putting it off. And people are coming to me going, Damien, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. You need to deal with it. And then it escalated to not only personal hygiene, but then timekeeping. And it just kept escalating and escalating because I kept putting it off. It was ultimately on me. What I should have done is took him to one side and just had a real candid discussion with, are you aware of personal hygiene? Are you aware of how you're presenting yourself? Is there anything that you need from us to help you? It turned out, when I did have them conversations, his washing machine had been broken for months. He was living in shared accommodation. His landlord wouldn't replace it. And he didn't really feel like he had anywhere to turn. Whereas by having that conversation with him, we could then help him. It was for a charity, and we were able to find some way where he could get his clothes washed, somewhere he could get some personal hygiene products. And it just took me having that conversation and being brave enough to say, whoa, this isn't right.
Oh man, that's sad, isn't it? It would have been totally under the radar had you not have done it. What was the impact on the team? Was there any impact there that, do you think it affected them in a way? If them seeing you maybe not addressing it, or? It
did, because you started to see their presentation kind of go downhill. They started not to care as much about being on time for work and not being on time to go see people that they were supporting. And when you look back, it's really easy to see. But when you're in the moment, it's so difficult to go, this is happening because I wasn't brave enough to go and have a sit-down conversation. Or I wasn't brave enough to go speak to the HR team to get their advice and their guidance on how to have that conversation. Because it's embarrassing, isn't it? It's really...
That's a tough one. I'd struggle with that as well, I think, yeah. There's only so many cans of Sure you can leave on the desk before it starts to become, we better tackle this more directly.
Yes, there's only so many Secret Santas of links you can buy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's definitely a tricky one.
So we have a final segment, Damien, which is the what would you do? Now, are you familiar with Reddit /MSP? I'm guessing you may be.
I am, yes.
Lovely. As you know, it's always very, very polite, well-balanced conversations that we find there. And it's a great place to go and have a little dive in. And what I tend to do is go and have a look for topics where it relates to what we're talking about today. So I pulled one out from Reddit. So let's have a quick look at this one. So basically, this person is asking, and we'll flash it up on the screen for those watching. This person is asking, what do you do when you've got a boss who effectively is a sort of, I guess it could be a victim of accidental culture. Essentially, they're consistently unavailable. There's no processes in place. They just expect the team to just figure it out on their own. What do you do as a staff member? Try to do the right thing there. What's the best way to handle that, would you say?
Well, that's a really hard one. The way I'd approach it now is completely different to the way I'd have approached it.
Go on, then, give me both versions.
So, several years ago, I'd have said, someone else's problem. I'll just turn up and do my job, and I'll just crack on and keep my head down and try not to cause any waves. The way I'd handle it now is I'd set deadlines again, going back to that whole, if I need an answer on something, I'm going to say to my boss, as well as the people that work for me, I need this by this time on this date. Where I do it differently with the boss is, I need you to proofread this by this time and this date. If you don't do it, then I'm going to assume it's all right. And we will go with whatever I've done. And I'll take the consequences of it. But that is good enough because you've not responded. And start to just do more. If someone is absent, there is opportunity there for someone who is hungry enough and willing enough to step up and start to take the lead. It might be that the MSP owner just doesn't want to do it. There's a great book, isn't there, called The E-Myth Revisited, where you start off doing the job because you enjoy it. So you start off in IT because you enjoy IT, and then suddenly you've got to do the accounts and you don't really enjoy that. And suddenly you've got to do the marketing and you don't enjoy that. And then you've got to start managing people to do all them jobs for you, and you really don't enjoy that. But you become a victim of your own success, where everything starts to just continue growing and rolling. If processes don't exist, find someone who likes to write processes. Find someone who will come in and help you document the business, whether that's someone in my kind of role, or it's a project manager or a head of service, head of support. Someone whose accountability is, you are going to create processes for the business to follow.
I love that. You've taken what could be quite a negative. You could easily, and of course it would be on Reddit, but you've taken that negative and you've seen it as an opportunity. It's good, Lorna. I like that one.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, Damien, thanks for sharing that with us. I've really enjoyed the chat today. Culture isn't something I necessarily dive into that much, which is why I quite like doing this series so much, is that we do look at this, the human stuff. So that's actually given me some stuff to think about as well. I think having the glass half full and actually being very clear about what you're asking for, definitely the challenging, the challenger mentality. I really like that.
Culture is definitely king at usecure.
Yeah, definitely, and I see that as well. Of course, we're on a usecure podcast. We're going to say that, but yes, it's true. It is true. I can vouch for that, and that's why we work with them as well. But Damien, we have a final question we always leave with, and that is, if you weren't doing operations and marketing stuff at Bondgate, what would you be doing instead?
What would I be doing instead? I honestly have no idea. I'd still be working in IT somewhere. I would probably be an IT manager, possibly at a charity. I like people. I like people more than I like technology. I kind of just fell into technology because I've used it since such an early age due to disability, and computers just have always been in my hands. I've worked on radio, so I quite enjoyed that.
Right.
So could be doing the what sort of stuff was that? What was that? The charts or what we talking here?
Interviews. So sitting in kind of your seat, James, interviewing bands and playing music. It was
How cool.
a short-lived thing, but it was good fun.
That's cool. Just leaning on the genius of other people, which is what I like to do.
Let everyone else do the hard work.
That's it. That's what it's all about. Anyway, listen. Well, thank you for doing the hard work today, people. Really enjoyed it. Lorna, thanks for joining me. We don't normally do the co-host thing, but that's going to be the future of this series, so we can make sure we're bringing in the usecure team members. So thanks for backing me up there.
Cool. No problem. Loved it. Nice to meet you again, Damien.
Nice to see you again.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Damon. We'll see you around. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. And is there anything else before we leave? Is there anything else you'd like to mention in terms of where people can find you, or anything you want to give a plug to in terms of what you're up to these days?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me. I do spend a lot of time giving my guidance and advice and opening up my heart on LinkedIn, because I think it's a safe place and it's a safe community. Find me in there.
Brilliant. Cool. Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next time.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.